Hello and pleasant good night, and thank you for joining Essence of Hope Breast Cancer Foundation. And we are presenting Ask the Doctor. As you know, this is Breast Cancer Month, and the theme is Awareness is Power. Every October, we celebrate breast cancer as it is a deadly disease that is robbing us of our loved ones, taking our sisters, taking our mothers, taking our aunts, even taking our uncles. And we have to get ahead of the game. So tonight we're going to have a discussion between 3 doctors and a thriver. Not a survivor, a thriver. We have gone beyond surviving. We are now thriving. And I'm going to let my panelists introduce themselves, and then right after we're going to get into our discussion. And remember, awareness is power. I am your host, Dr. Joylette Woodley Faisal. And to my right, I have 2 doctors who will introduce themselves. And then to my left, I have our thriver, who would also introduce herself. So Dr. Grant-Tate, pleasant good night, and thank you for being here with us.
Thank you. Good evening. I am Dr. Marissa Grant-Tate, oncologist, and I function at the JNF Oncology Department as well as my private practice, WellPoint Medical and Oncology. And as an oncologist, I take care of patients who are diagnosed with cancer.
Okay, Dr. Clark, pleasant good night, and thank you for being here.
Good night. I am Dr. Erin Clark-Byes, consultant radiologist. I work at the X-ray department, JNF Hospital, and also I have my private practice located within the Antioch Baptist Church at Limekeel.
And to my left, I have the gorgeous Miss Percival, who would introduce herself.
Hi, good evening. I'm Alicia Percival. I'm the thriver.
Yes, and I love that word, thriver.
Correct.
So Dr. Grant, I think we have gone beyond the word survivor. Why have we moved from survivor now to thriver?
Well, I guess survivor sort of depicts what would be having gone through, what would have been a battle, as if, you would have come out of the battle already. And the truth of the matter is that cancer is an ongoing and forever, it requires what would be the necessary vigilance. And so then we have to move past just surviving, and we have to thrive. We also have to get back to what would be a certain standard of, care and living in terms of reminding ourselves in terms of who we are as individuals and moving past what would be the fear, the stigma, and everything else that may be associated with a cancer diagnosis. So instead of surviving, then we thrive, correct?
Exactly. Yes. So in essence, we're actually trying to get back to some type of normalcy.
Absolutely.
After you would have gone through that battle, after you would have gone through the ups and downs, the tears, then you would have fought, you would have won, and now you are thriving.
Absolutely.
I love that. So even before we get into our discussion, we have to look at this foundation, which is Essence of Hope Breast Cancer Foundation. And this foundation has given so many of our cancer patients, survivors, and thrivers. This organization has given them hope. Hope that during this tough period, you can get through. Hope that at the end of the tunnel, there is light. And this foundation was formed by Pamela Hendrickson, who is the founder. And if you can give me slide number 2, please, so we can have a look at her. And it is a non-profit organization exclusively for charitable, educational, and scientific purposes. And can you imagine? It was formed with just $1,500 EC dollars. So sometimes we think we have to have a lot of money, we need a lot of influential persons to do the right thing. But I always say, once you care, once you have your mind or your brains or your thoughts in the correct spot, then you can get anything done. This organization, it offers free mammograms, financial assistance, which our thriver would speak about. It also gives money for chemotherapy. It helps persons who actually go overseas for additional treatment. So we want to thank Ms. Hendrickson, the founder, along with other workers like Dr. Marcus Nato, who have placed so much time and effort into this foundation, and it's all because they care. So Alicia, Good night again. Gorgeous. You're looking well.
Thank you.
Take us through your journey. And before you start, let me say you're very brave, and we want to thank you so, so much for coming out. So take us through your journey.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. It was difficult at first, hearing the diagnosis. Because when you hear about cancer, you think about like death. Basically, there's no coming back after. But then, after speaking with Dr. Woodley, Dr. Grant Tate, and Pam, you know, as you said, there's hope. They made it possible. It was difficult, real difficult, but with support from your family and your friends, they made it possible.
And you have brought up something very interesting. I mean, you said support. And when Alicia came to me, she actually had her support system already there. And that helps tremendously. She even has her support system here in the studio.
Correct.
So Alicia always has support. And that is what we want to get out. Essence of Hope, it's here to educate you, bring awareness. And awareness is not just for the patient, but for those around the patient. Okay? And she's so fortunate because the three persons here, the three doctors here, we are the ones who she interacted with. So Dr. Clark, let us, when you met her, what was going on, what you did, you are a radiologist, what part do you play in this?
When I met Alicia, she was quiet. She didn't say much. Actually, I think her sister did all the talking for her because she was frightened. What I did for her was an ultrasound. I think I started with the ultrasound, saw a mass, and then we proceeded to the mammogram where the diagnosis was made. The role of the radiologist is basically to detect breast cancer. We use the mammogram and also the ultrasound. Both basically goes hand in hand. The mammogram can see breast cancer that is not yet felt, doesn't have any symptoms. However, the ultrasound, when there's a mass, I use the ultrasound to detect whether or not the mass may be a cyst, malignant, or any other hormonal mass.
Okay, so from the mass, and David, can I get slide number, that's 15, please? So as Dr. Clark was saying, so when she met you, Miss Percival, you started out with the ultrasound. Yes. And then from the ultrasound, you went on to the mammogram. So some persons might ask, why you just didn't stay at the ultrasound, why you went on further to do with the mammogram. And as you can see on the screen, you can see a doctor doing the ultrasound, and you can see somebody else doing a mammogram. Okay? Mm-hmm.
Okay. The ultrasound, I sometimes do not see the exact borders of the mass. The mammogram will be able to show the mass in its entirety, the borders, if they're smooth, if they're irregular, and if there are any other component within the breast, such as calcium deposit, microcalcifications, and also it can detect if there are deep lymph nodes within the axillary regions. So instead of leaving it just at the ultrasound, we proceeded to the mammogram to get the the full information on the patient, because it depends on the mammogram, what is seen, her treatment, and basically the way forward. When she goes to the surgeon or the oncologist, the treatment depends on what we see on the mammogram or on the ultrasound.
Okay. Okay, that's great. So I don't quite remember the sequence though, that how Miss Percival ended up with me, but I know after Dr. Clark would have done the ultrasound, you had any fears? Did she convey anything to you? How did you feel after the ultrasound?
Scared.
So at that moment, what did you pick up from Dr. Clark when you did the ultrasound? What was happening? What you saw? What was going on? Yes, I know it's tough. And as I said, you are so brave coming here. Your story, no doubt, would inspire people to push on. Your story would let persons who want to give up realize, hey, I'm looking at a thriver, so I can make it through. I know it's very tough. So, Dr. Clark, so after you would have done the ultrasound, from there you would have referred the patient back to her private doctor, or?
Well, I cannot recall who was the private doctor, but I think she went to you.
Yes,
but I don't know who referred her in the first place, or if she came, self-referred.
Okay. Okay, she just, yes. So she was referred to her private doctor, who later sent her on to me. And as I said, when I met Miss Percival, she came and she was afraid. And that is normal. That's something normal to expect. And we sat and we looked through the ultrasound and the mammogram. And I remembered where you, Dr. Clark, you wrote that you think we should do a biopsy because you did not like basically what you saw. So that is why it's important for us as doctors to speak with each other, because many times I would call up Dr. Grant and say, hey, I have this situation, what do you think? And then we went and we did a biopsy. So Dr. Grant, in terms of, the biopsies, what is your take on those?
Well, at the end of the day, the biopsy is ultimately the confirmation in respect to what is the diagnosis of any type of cancer. And so very often, although there may be what would be suggestive signs, including, for example, some of the signs that Dr. Clark would have mentioned on, say, for example, in the case of breast cancer on the mammogram, by itself, then we are not able to proceed with what would be the necessary treatment without having had a biopsy in hand. And so in terms of the biopsies, there are different types of biopsies that we use. There are some that are more invasive than others. I know sometimes there are patients who are afraid to get what would be, whether it be the incisional biopsy, which is in fact, the most preferred form of the biopsy as it would pertain to breast cancer, not the excisional biopsy as how, we would have heard in some other instances may have been said, but rather the incisional biopsy, where it is then that the person would have had, or the surgeon would have been able, or the examiner would have been able to retract what would be a portion of the tumor itself, but not with trying to take what would be the tumor in its entirety. And the reason for that is simply because of the fact that the first intent for surgery, when it would as it would relate to breast cancer, is the best intent for what is going to be curation. And so then we highly suggest what would be the incisional biopsy as opposed to the excisional biopsy. We also have what would be considered as a fine needle aspiration, and then you have as well to what is a core biopsy. The fine needle aspiration, with that, then you're able to get what would be cells, which would be sufficient to be able to give you a diagnosis of cancer or not cancerous, but it's not able to give you the type of detail as you would be able to get with more of a sample, whether it be from a core needle biopsy or the incisional biopsy or the excisional biopsy. But at the end of the day, as we say in cancer care, the biopsy is king.
The biopsy is king.
Right.
So the point that we want to get out, and which our thriver she went through, was that she did a biopsy.
Biopsy, correct.
In that instance, what I did was the excisional biopsy, because the mass was that small that we took
out everything based on the size, correct.
So we did the biopsy. And Ms. Percival, how was the surgery experience for you? If you want to share some of that with us, how was that for you, the surgery experience? Did you understand? So by the time you reach to that stage, because what we're trying to let our viewers understand, that things happen in stages. You just don't get up, feel a lump, and you end up in the operating room, or you end up by Dr. Tate or by Dr. Baez, Dr. Clark. So once you would have gotten the result from the ultrasound, we decided to do the biopsy. How at that point of your journey, how was that for you?
Frightening.
Frightening.
Not first.
Was it frightening that you didn't want to do it, or you decided, okay, I'm going to be frightened and I'm going to go? Well, you went through with it. At any point in time, you decided, you know what, I don't want to know.
Yeah, and still no, because then I still needed to know in order to move forward, to know what to do next.
What to do next? So then you would have, so if you realized if you hadn't done the biopsy, then we would not have,
Discussion.
we wouldn't have this discussion. Perfect. And that's the point we want to get across. You have to do what you have to do.
Yeah,
That's the
you have
essence
to,
of hope.
You have to do early detection.
Early detection, exactly. So, of course, I was her surgeon. I did the biopsy, and then the biopsy came back with, you know, the confirmation. That's sad news. And I can recall when you came to the office, and you came with your support as usual. And even for us as doctors, it is tough. As a doctor, one, and two, as a female, because it's most prevalent in females. Although Dr. Grant and I go back and forth with the male part.
Statistics.
Yes. And so I always hate giving that type of information, because you know you're going to change somebody's life drastically, for the rest of their lives. And when you came and I told you your support, I mean, she was awesome. And what we want to get out from this platform, Essence of Hope, is that we need supporters. We need a strong friend, family unit. We need to be behind each other, because while Miss Percival, Alicia, was dealing with the situation, trying to wrap her mind around it, her support was busy taking all the information down. What next? Okay, Dr. Woodley, tell me this, tell me that. And it was so beautiful to witness, because she was there, she was supporting her, tapping her on the back, you'll be fine, okay, but she was dealing with me. Dr. Woodley, what is next? So continue the story for us, because you know it's a little storytelling. Continue the story. So we did the biopsy, I gave you the news that it was indeed, you know, cancerous, and then we moved further. But before we go any further, Dr. Grant, in terms of staging of cancer, we hear about the staging and what is staging. It can be very complex. So try and simplify it for our viewers tonight, please.
Oh, as best put. Because to be quite honest, staging, you know, as the oncologist actually is quite extravagant. And so then not even just for what would be the 4 basic stages, you know, as it would relate to cancer staging. When it comes to an oncologist, we go into the nitty-gritty. But nonetheless, for what would be a general sense of understanding, we have what would be a stage 1. Well, to be quite frank, actually, you have what we consider stage 0, which is where the cancer is still limited to what would be the cell in which it would have first originated. And so then we refer to that as being an in situ carcinoma. Then we have what would be the stage 1. Stage 1, then the tumor is actually still quite small. You know, we consider then what is going to be between. I don't know if I should bore you with actual sizes, but nonetheless, stage 1, which is to say that the cancer is you know, still limited within the breast itself. It has not started to spread to, you know, any other part in respect to the body. Stage 2, it is still also limited to the breast, but it has grown based more in terms of what would be the size. And in stage 3, then we consider that to be locally advanced, and so then what that means is that it is no longer just in the breast, but it would have started to disseminate or spread to what would be the lymph nodes, and particularly as it would relate to breast cancer, the lymph nodes that are generally first affected tend to be those of the armpit. And then we have stage 4, when the cancer then would have spread to other parts of the body, whether it be that of the lungs, whether it be to the bones, whether it be to the liver, whether it be to the brain. And these are some of the more frequent sites in terms of where breast cancer tends to spread.
Okay, so Dr. Clark, in your experience, how often should somebody do a mammogram?
After the age of 40, I think that females should have a mammogram done annually, up to the age of maybe 65, but we have seen that after 65, some patients still present with breast cancer. So it depends sometimes on the patient, their doctor, their risk factors, and all of those, but the mammogram should be done annually.
And just to add to, you know, a bit in terms of what Dr. Clark would have pointed out in terms of the age, as you would have pointed out, Dr. Clark, correctly, so you have instances where patients, even in their 70s, tend to have or be diagnosed with breast cancer. And the truth of the matter is that breast cancer is what we would consider to be bimodal in terms of the incidence. And so then you have two general ages at where you would have, or groups rather, where you would have what would be the highest peaks of breast cancer. And so then generally you have what would be the perimenopausal woman. So in other words, then, you know, what would be generally between the ages of 43 to 47, thereabouts. That is where you have the first spike, and then you have the second spike in women who would be postmenopausal, which generally tends to be around the age of 60. And so then this is where you would find the highest peaks, but it doesn't mean that you cannot have breast cancer at the other ages. And of course, age by itself is a factor for every cancer, which includes breast cancer. And so then the older that we are able to live to, then this too also increases the risk for cancer.
When you call that perimenopausal age,
we're getting there.
You kind of had me there for a while, Dr. Grant. You did. So, Dr. Grant, let's talk again. Can men get breast cancer? Because that's something that we sometimes don't speak about, we ignore, and some men sometimes don't think that it's possible. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, obviously, I try to ensure that the men are aware of the fact that, yes, they can also develop breast cancer. But as an oncologist, I feel that it is my, primary responsibility to reaffirm the fact that breast cancer is not a frequent illness within the male. Breast cancer, it is, an illness that we see particularly and more so in women. 1 out of every 8 of us as women will be diagnosed with breast cancer. And in what was 2021, then there were over 2 million new cases that were diagnosed worldwide. New cases, mind you. So this had absolutely nothing to do with what would have been cases that would have existed before that. And that was the specific number in terms of new cases for women, and in men only had what would have been 1% of that. So literally it is an illness of the woman, but yes, you can have some instances where the man may be diagnosed. So what I would simply say, the need for what is the screening, it is not as aggressive or as necessary when it comes to the male for breast cancer, but if a man should find what would be a suspicious lump or a lump within the breast area, then absolutely he should have it checked out.
Perfectly so. So, Ms. Percival, we're gonna, have you chime in again. What advice would you give to our sisters out there, our aunts, our mothers about breast cancer? What signs? Did you have any signs? Did you have any symptoms? What prompted you?
I was actually taking a shower, and I was washing under my arm, and I felt something. So I was like, what is? So then I put it on my hand, put it back up, thinking it was going to go.
It was going to go away.
But then it did not. So then I finished, I came out and I asked my significant other, you feel, that? He was like, yeah, why TCB? I was like, I don't know. He was like, okay, you're going to doctor tomorrow. I was like, yeah, message my best friend, message others. I was like, I found a lump. They was like, okay, don't panic. I was like, yeah, that's easy for you to say. And you find it. But he had, and once you detect early, everything will be okay. Early detection save lives. Early detection save lives. Do your tests and everything gonna be okay.
And you said something so important there, that your significant other, once he felt it too, he said right away, you have to go to the doctor.
Correct.
Sometimes, we say, okay, let's pray, let's see if it's going to go away. I normally tell my patients, you can pray and come to me. That's
Correct.
okay. We'll pray in my office.
Correct.
We'll sit down there and hold hands and pray. But just come and let's get it done. But that was so important. And then you called up your support group right away. And you see, we are emphasizing. And we need to be, yes, the support. We need to be each other's keeper. Sometimes we leave each other by themselves for too long on their own. And we don't support. And sometimes without that support, you don't get the patient or the person who is suffering from a particular disease to make the correct or the most informed decisions. So that's something I really want to highlight, the support. And you went right away. And something again that I want to highlight is what you're saying. Go ahead, early detection would save your life. And that is, if anything we get home tonight is that early detection would save your life. So, Dr. Clark, can I just walk into your office and tell you I need a mammogram or ultrasound?
Sure, you can.
So I don't need to, because that's a normal question.
Right. Sure,
Do I have to go
can.
to a doctor? So that means that's 2 doctors I have to go to, So
Definitely, you can just walk in and request a mammogram.
you can request a mammogram.
Yes.
And especially once you hit the age of 40. But to put a little plug in, because Miss Percival
It's not 40.
is not 40.
Yes.
So, and we need to ask as well, anyone in your family suffered from this? Any your mom, any sister, any cousin?
No.
So you are indeed the first. So you have become your family history. So persons would use you now as a reference.
Yes.
So she is under 40. So it's ticklish there. So how do we navigate that, Dr. Graham? Because we met her since last year, everything went through, but she's a girl, yeah. I remember those days,
So maybe I'm gonna get through
You're going to get to I remember those days, oh boy. So, Dr. Grant, now navigate for that, because you see how medicine is,
Right.
as we keep speaking all the time, it's not
Right.
according to the books. So she is under 40, so how do we
Does not
tell those? So we don't want everybody know who's under 40 to panic. So what's going to happen to those now? So when do you suggest somebody who's under 40 get a mammogram?
Well, to be quite honest, what we do, and as Dr. Clark would have pointed out earlier, is that the ultrasound and the mammogram, they actually complement each other. And so then, in actuality, even when a woman would have been over the age of 40, if it is that she finds a lump, ideally, the first thing that should be done should be the ultrasound. And the purpose of that is to be able to decide whether it is that the mass, the lump that would have been felt, whether it's a solid mass or whether it is that it may be a cyst or something else, as Dr. Clark would have earlier explained. And so then, if it is that it is confirmed to be a solid mass, then at that point in time, we recommend what would either be the mammogram and or what would be the excision of the mass, in other words, the biopsy of that mass. So the truth of the matter is, once you find what is a lump, irrespective of the age, and in actuality, 3% of women will be diagnosed in their 30s, or before 30 rather, with breast cancer. Dr. Woodley and I, we speak about this pretty often in respect to the statistics and so forth. But to be quite honest, even though we are in fact seeing quite a few in our population, our local population, of cases that would be much younger, below 40, with breast cancer, I cannot ably say that it's not going according to the book. The truth of the matter is that the number one risk factor for breast cancer is being a woman. And so then, we bear in mind that, yes, this is a principal factor. And then, of course, you also have some other factors that contribute towards breast cancer. And one of such things would actually be, a genetic mutation, as we would refer to it, and what we find or what we suspect here, well, I shouldn't even say suspect, because actually there are quite a few of the younger women who would have undergone specific BRCA1, BRCA2 testing here, and have been found to be positive. So in other words, we are in fact sticking to what is being written. It's really not reinventing the wheel as such.
Okay, so that is so important. Here in St. Kitts, we are fortunate. We have the oncology unit at the hospital. Most countries, okay, don't have such a unit, and we are fortunate enough that we have one with 2 oncologists on board. So when we get back from our break, we're going to speak a little about the oncology department at the JNF Hospital and the different type of treatment, what you can get there, what to expect if you are a person suffering from breast cancer. So we're going to take a break and we're going to come right back. Thank you.
Elevate your experience with Flow's fiber-fast internet and mobile combined. Enjoy double data and unlimited talk on 4 mobile lines, plus up to 35 megabits per second home internet speed at the best rate, giving you the best value to stay connected. I think our Flow mobile is elevated.
You think?
An elevated experience starts with Flow at home, powering double data and unlimited talk on 4 mobile lines at the best rate. Visit the Flow store to sign up today.
I think of myself as a happy person, but I find myself crying late at night for no reason. I wish I could tell someone.
I'm always the life of the party, but even when I'm in a crowd, I always feel so alone. I wish I could tell someone.
I wish I could look in the mirror and not hear the voices in my head call me fat. I wish I could tell someone.
I'm always at the gym taking care of my body, but I can't exercise away my mental health issues, and I wish I could tell someone.
My family is so proud of me for doing so well in school, but the pressure to do well is so overwhelming that I can't eat or sleep. I wish I could tell someone.
I used to do really well in school, but ever since my dad was killed, I haven't been able to sleep or concentrate.
I wish
I could tell someone.
Pleasant good night, and thank you for being with us, Essence of Hope Breast Cancer Foundation. And if you're just joining us, you missed quite a bit. We are here speaking with Dr. Grant Tate, oncologist, Dr. Clark Bias, radiologist, and Ms. Percival, a thriver of breast cancer. And I'm your host, Dr. Woodley. So far, we have looked at the processes that are involved in determining if someone has breast cancer. We have looked at the diagnosis. Well, first, patient be diagnosed or feeling this, or looking at the signs and symptoms, then being diagnosed, then seeing their surgeon, then we move from there to actually seeing the oncologist if surgery was done. We are going to speak about the oncology units at the Joseph and France Hospital, and as I was saying before the break, many countries, many islands, many developing islands don't have the privilege of having such a unit on island. As I said earlier, we have 2 oncologists. We have Dr. Grant Tate and we have Dr. Leon. And they are the 2 doctors who are actually, I was going to say the word manning, but womaning the oncology unit at Joseph and France Hospital. So Dr. Grant, give us, some ideas as, what happened, what are the processes that go on up there. And because some persons, when they hear about the oncology unit, that in itself is scary, because we just think cancer and then we think death. So, allay some fears for us and speak to us about the oncology unit at the hospital.
So the oncology unit at the JNF hospital, it was actually first established in what would have been 2016. We would, at that point in time, there would have been, I can't remember quite frankly, the name of the oncologist at that time, but it would have been through the Cuban mission. As you know, we've always benefited significantly from what has been the assistance and the partnership with Cuba, and after that it transitioned to, again, what would have been another oncologist through the Cuban mission. But in essence, the oncology department, what actually happens there is simply put, we care for our patients. It is a world of its own, and that is honestly how I describe it when I'm telling new patients of the oncology department. I'm pretty sure that is what I would have told you, correct? Correct, Alicia?
They are amazing.
Right. That
awesome doctors.
Thank you.
Awesome, awesome. So let me just get Elisa plug inside here, because it seems as if she had a great time there. So how was your experience at the units?
They make you feel comfortable.
They make you feel comfortable. That is good. I love that.
Yes.
Okay, so you were not or were you afraid initially?
At
first you were afraid.
At first, because I was like, what they're going to do?
What they're going to
you
do.
know, what the process will be. But I was anxious still, because I wanted to get over it. But they made me feel at home in spite of the situation, and they were attentive. And you could have asked them anything. You know, they're going to tell you, they're going to make you laugh. Yeah.
That is great, and that's what you need, especially going through a period so devastating, so trying, so tense, something that is unknown too. So you need that type of care. Okay, so Dr. Grant, okay, but I needed to get in. That's why
I agree. So in terms of what is offered at the oncology unit, we offer what would be the necessary treatment in terms of systemic therapy, which many may bracket as chemotherapy, but there are different forms or different types of systemic therapy. We have what would be the newer forms of treatment in terms of immunotherapy, so just about any drug that may be offered worldwide in any other center, that is also readily available to patients here who require it for their treatment, of irrespective of whatever type of cancer that they may be diagnosed with. A frequent question is usually as to whether it is that we offer radiotherapy at the oncology department, and no, we do not. And usually when I respond to that question, then people would quickly tell me, well, you know, that's something that we need to hurry up and, you know, get sorted out here. And I try to point out to people that we simply do not have what is the necessary population to be able to sustain a radiation department, sorry, a radiotherapy department, simply because of the fact that not only the equipment, but also too in terms of the maintenance and so forth that is necessary. It is beyond expensive, and so then what you generally find is that even other centers within the region, for example, there's the cancer center in Antigua, which is, you know, just a stone throw away, for example, and others along the island chain, and generally you find, for one reason or another, even in the instances of where they may be government funded, they usually have difficulty in terms of sustaining the service, and so our very small population of St. Kitts and Nevis simply would not be able to sustain a radiation oncology department.
Okay. So you gave us one example of where persons can go, that is Antigua. Are there any other places that you send patients?
Absolutely. Well, generally, as with everything else when it comes to cancer care, it's so important to get what is going to be the patient's input. And so then one of the things that you generally would discuss with the person who is looking to have radiation would be if they first have a place that, you know, is of preference. And so then Very often someone may say, well, they have this family in the US, or, and so then they would like to go there. And generally, I would encourage that once it is something that is feasible, but of course, by emphasizing on what is the necessary timeline. It is not uncommon at all that people would be diagnosed with cancer here in St. Kitts and Nevis, and then they just sort of put away, what is the diagnosis on a shelf, and they wait for a while, trying to fix other things. And with everything else, with what would be the expense of not only radiation, but also to chemotherapy if it were necessary and so forth, I guess that sort of takes a toll on quite a few people. But simply put, yes, whether it be the United States, if that is what they choose to, once it is available to them within what is going to be the necessary period of time. There is Southern Medical Oncology Center in Trinidad, of which too I am also quite fond. But I would say unequivocally that Cuba is my absolute most favorite in terms of site for referral of patients with cancer for radiation. And simply to say that, it is not only very effective in terms of the quality of care, the standard of care which the patients are able to receive, but it is absolutely inexpensive when compared to other centers, be it in the Caribbean, be it in the US. And so then I highly recommend what would be Cuba for radiation oncology.
Okay, sounds great. We're going to have a look at slide number 3 for us, please, where we are going to show the list of activities by the Foundation Essence of Hope during the month of October. And as you know, it is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and a few activities would have passed already. We are now today, the 13th of October, and we're having this show, which is Ask the Doctor. And on the 16th, we're going to have Pink Sunday, and that would be at the Antioch Baptist Church. That's 9:30 a.m. So everybody's going to be decked out in his or her pink. I think men, they wear pink too. Yeah, there's a real men wear pink. Then on the 26th, we're going to have a dance exercise, and that's at St. Kitts Marriott Resort. That sounds good. So Alicia, I guess we're going to have to buddy up. I hope your support system doesn't get vexed with me. All right. And then on the 28th, she would share. Okay, I love that. And on the 28th, we're going to have Pink Friday. So everyone will be wearing pink that day, that entire day. And on the 29th, we are going to have the Pink Walk. I have some statistics about the Pink Walk. It started in 2009, and at that walk there was 450 persons. Then at 2010 you had 700 persons. Then by 2011, 900. It peaked in 2019 with 1,700 persons. I mean, that's awesome. So you know what that has said to us? That the message is getting out. It's getting out there. People are becoming aware. People want to participate. People want to help. And this foundation, they receive a lot of sponsors, donations from all the different persons in society, be it private, be it public. So the message is getting out there. And what we have to remember, Pam started this with $1,500 EC. She started this with a vision. And that's because she had some friends who actually passed from breast cancer, this evil monster. And she decided, I need to do my part.
Right.
I need to do my part. I need to do my part. And we have to sometimes say, you know what? I need to do my part. And we want to give Pam, a lot of kudos, a lot of thank yous, along with, her hard-working staff, many persons like Dr. Nata and others, persons who would have come out of Essence of Hope and doing their own, charitable events, counseling. I know of Diane Keynes. She always says to me, Dr. Woodley, if you have anybody, just send them to me. I would counsel them. I would hold her hand through this process because I know it is hard. So we really have to make an effort to help each other. So I'm so shocked that in 2019, 1,700 persons latched on. I mean, that's great. Of course, it dropped in 2020 and 2021 because of the pandemic, but even in 2021, 1,200 persons went out. So that still shows that PAM, your foundation, is strong. It's not going anywhere. It's doing wonders. So this year, 2022, when we have a new vibes in the island, things light. So we want to, PAM, we want to get this like probably up to 20,000 people with the whole of St. Kitts. We want to get the whole of St. Kitts out, supporting our survivors and thrivers. Okay? So, Ms. Percival, any more advice you would have for persons out there in terms of, what to eat? And you are interested, your case is so interesting because what is your profession? What do you do?
I'm a chef.
She's a chef. I mean, if you look at her profile picture, I mean, you would just want to eat vegetables. Her profile picture is hot. It's, the peppers, bell peppers, carrots. She's a chef. So what have you learned during this process as it relates to diet and being a breast cancer thriver?
You got to change how you eat. You got to eat to live and not live to eat. That's my best friend.
That's your best.
Slow. Yeah.
So you would advise eating healthy. Make your plate pretty with all the different vegetables and
the
greens, etc. So Dr. Grant, what advice in terms of eating? Because patients normally ask me that. I will say, hey, go back to Dr. Grant. Say, go back to Dr. Grant.
Yes, that's what you told me.
That's what I told you? Okay. So, I'm not lying. I would say, go ask Dr. Grant. Go ahead, go and ask her. So how can you advise our patients?
Simply put, you want to try and keep the diet as clean as possible, even if it is that, you, for whatever reason, you're not successful every day, then you have to try to be successful most days. So you definitely want to reduce the sugar significantly. I often point out and say it's not to eliminate sugar altogether, but the best that you can reduce it, obviously, then that would be ideal. You want to remove every and anything that is fried from the diet as well. You also want to reduce and perhaps to even eliminate where possible the dairy, simply because we know that dairy products, they are quite filled with fat. And ultimately, breast cancer in particularly, it is a cancer that is hormonally driven. And so then we know as well too that the body uses cholesterol to make some of these sex hormones, which include the very estrogens that contribute to breast cancer. So we want to try and eliminate the things that can ultimately lead to what would be a more obese form in terms of body type. I would also say too, you try to make sure that you eliminate what would be alcohol, because alcohol is another important factor when it comes to intake and risk factor for breast cancer. I usually point out that, someone who takes in 30 grams of alcohol frequently, that increases the risk of breast cancer. And 30 grams of alcohol is, far less than what you will get in a cup of wine, far less than what you will get in a beer. So even someone who may say, well, I don't drink often, but when I go out on the weekends, then I'll have my full. That is a problem, because even though you're not drinking it every day, for the quantity that you're then going to consume in what is that short space, whether it be the Friday or the Saturday or the Sunday, if you're one of those, then that increases the risk for breast cancer as well. So those are the principal things that I would say should be eliminated from the diet. And basically from there, then you're at free will to eat most other things. Or I should say the red meat as well too. You want to reduce the quantity of the red meat. It doesn't have to be eliminated. Usually we would say no more than 2 servings of red meat weekly, but for the proportions that we use here in St. Kitts and Nevis, then it is safe. That's a good idea. We should say that once monthly. But generally then I would say, well, no more than one serving a week in terms of the red meat. But everything else, you know, your fish, your chicken, whatnot have you, then you're free to use that as you should or as you want, as you would like to.
Okay, and you said something important. We're going to take a break, but before we go, you spoke about the alcohol because females now, I mean, once ago we thought it was a male thing, but we get many females coming into us and they're heavy consumers. They drink a lot. They fall down too. You know, they drink, and it's true. So you would go out on the weekend and you would see females and they're actually jugging down, you know, alcohol. So alcohol for those females, you know, it's a risk factor.
Absolutely.
It's a risk factor for breast cancer. So you may just want to be careful. Just have, instead of the 2 and the 3 and, you know, the different types, the daiquiri, so filled with alcohol, you have to be really, really careful with that. So how big your mojito glass should be?
Leave the mojito. Leave the mojito. And do the daiquiris virgin as well.
The daiquiris virgin as well. Okay, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, Dr. Clark, we're going to talk about the mammogram because many persons are so afraid of it. It hurts, it this, it's that. So we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come right back.
Double the deals, double the savings for this year. Only at Smarten Island Electronics. Save big, yes, twice as much as last year. When you purchase any of your favorite gadgets, electronics or appliances, we have the widest range of cell phones, tablets, laptops, Bluetooth speakers, refrigerators, stoves, washing machines, small appliances, and much, much more. From the smallest to the largest, visit us at Smart Electronics on Pozante and Highland Electronics on 4th Street. Double the deals, double the savings for this new year. Terms and conditions apply.
I think of myself as a happy person, but I find myself crying late at night for no reason. I wish I could tell someone.
I'm always the life of the party. But even when I'm in a crowd, I always feel so alone. I wish I could tell someone.
I wish I could look in the mirror and not hear the voices in my head call me fat. I wish I could tell someone.
I'm always at the gym taking care of my body, but I can't exercise away my mental health issues, and I wish I could tell someone.
My family is so proud of me for doing so well in school, but the pressure to do well is so overwhelming that I can't eat or sleep. I wish I could tell someone.
I used to do really well in school, but ever since my dad was killed, I haven't been able to sleep or concentrate.
I wish
I could tell someone.
Good night and welcome to Ask the Doctor. Awareness is power. This is October, and as we know, it is the month for breast cancer awareness. Tonight, we are joined by Dr. Clark, Dr. Grant, and Ms. Percival, who is a thriver. And let me put a little plug in here. We have Dr. Grant Tate, who is our first female oncologist in the Federation, and that's no easy feat. We also have Dr. Erin Clark Baez, who is our first female radiologist in the Federation as well. And of course, we have yours truly, the first female general surgeon here in the island. So it's a little woman power thing up here, and we need to add Miss Percival to the woman power for being so brave. So brave in coming out and giving her story as a thriver of that deadly disease, breast cancer. And I know, Ms. Percival, your story would have inspired so many persons to, look at themselves, closer, to not be afraid to go to the doctor to get themselves checked. And you have said that early detection is key. And you are a perfect example of early detection would actually save your life. Before we went on break, I told Dr. Clark to, get prepared to speak to us about the mammogram. I must say I had mine when I was 40. You want to say that age? Yeah. And I was actually anxious, Dr. Clark, because everybody told me, girl, it's going to hurt. In fact, I have patients, as Dr. Grant was saying, they would give you every detail of the pain that they went through. But honestly, when I had mine, it was painless. I mean, I was wondering, I was waiting for the pain and
correct.
it never happened. So explain to us, is it a myth? Well, for me, it didn't happen. So what happens when a mammogram is done?
Well, when a mammogram is done, the breast is compressed between a paddle and an x-ray is done of the breast. A localized x-ray is done with very little radiation of the breast. Most women complain, that they have pain or discomfort. I would say discomfort more than pain. But it depends on the time of month that the mammogram is done. If a woman is menstruating, then it's best done before the 10th day of the menstruation, because after that day begins the ovulation. Then the breast gets tender, and if it's done between that time, then the patient will complain of pain. But before that, when the breast is compressed, it will have just discomfort rather than being painful. For postmenopausal women, it can be done anytime. They just choose a day and have it done because there are no hormones influencing the breast tissues. So to me, the pain is a myth because myself, I have done one and it's not painful. It's just the 20-30 seconds of discomfort that you get, and after that it's okay.
Because it doesn't take long.
It doesn't take long. That's the thing. It doesn't take long. 20 to 30 seconds compression of both breasts in 2 different views, and it's done.
And that 20 to 30 seconds can save your life.
Exactly.
So, Elisa, was yours painful?
No.
No, it wasn't.
It's tough, eh?
So you went in like a boss. And you went in and you got it done, and it was not painful. But what I must say though, and Dr. Clark, you made a good point, that if it's close to your menstruation, when your breast is tender, then
it's not wise.
It's not wise to do a mammogram. Then
it's always best to wait, and also you can get false images because the tissue is thickened. So sometimes after the menstruation, the breast is non-tender and it has the normal tissue. Before that, the breast tissue is thickened. So on the mammogram, we can get a thickened breast tissue, which is actually nothing, because after the period, we repeat the mammogram and there's nothing. It disappears completely.
And some persons have the theory that, I did the mammogram and it caused the lump to spread, or
No.
to spread.
No. The compression, it's actually monitored by the machine as well. It doesn't allow the paddles to go down too much on the breast as they say, squash it. No, it goes to a designated pressure, and then the mammogram is done. But if the machine doesn't feel that pressure, it's not going to do the mammogram. It has to be at a certain pressure in order for the mammogram, the x-ray, to be emitted to do the x-ray image.
So what about those persons who have very, very small breasts?
Oh, no problem. We have paddles of different sizes, even for men.
Oh, you have paddles for men too?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that. So okay. So because that's normally a concern, patients would come to me, but Dr. Woody, I have very little breast tissue.
Big breast, small breast. We have paddles of different. We have 4 different sizes, even for men.
Oh.
And we just change them according to the size of the breast.
Okay, that's interesting. That's very much interesting. So 20-30 seconds of discomfort to save your life. Trust me, I'm there.
Done that.
And again, to reaffirm what Dr. Woodley would have said, because I would have done mammograms, and I can't even say that I experienced discomfort during the process of the mammogram. At most, I would say, perhaps what was the coldness of the of the plate.
Sometimes it's a mind thing more than anything else.
Correct.
It's just what you have heard before.
Correct.
People saying, so you're going with a mindset, oh, I'm going to have pain, it's going to hurt. But sometimes it's just nothing, you feel nothing.
And you're right, Dr. Clark, because sometimes persons going there so afraid. So, because, you would have
they're
probably,
expecting.
because especially if they would have come to me and I would have done an exam and said, oh boy, you need to see Dr. Clark for an ultrasound or a mammogram, and then they start thinking, oh boy, when the doctor would think it's a cancer. So that fear, in their minds, they go to do the mammogram and, oh, it's hurting. It's hurting. But I must say, persons who would have like an abscess or some type of
that will definitely hurt.
That will definitely hurt. So of course nothing is absolute.
But for an abscess, it's always best to start or something that you suspect really is big, because an abscess will have heat. The ultrasound is best.
Is best.
Correct.
Okay. So if someone who has an abscess, we will not go straight and do the mammogram. We just do the ultrasound, get the abscess under control with antibiotics, anti-inflammatories, and then.
Yes, and it's also for younger patients. The ultrasound is first, and then the mammogram.
And then the mammogram. Okay, interesting. We are going to invite persons to call in. Of course, we want the public to be part of discussion. I mean, we do this show for you, and we want you to call in, share your experience, let us know how it was for you, or if you have any family member who would have experienced this. The numbers are on the screen. We have 466-2666. We have 662-8674, 767-4765, and our overseas number is 1-239-645-4500. And while we wait for our calls, Dr. Grant, in terms of the myths about breast cancer,
so many.
So many. But, one lady, I can recall when, I gave her diagnosis. She said, but I'm a Christian.
I remember that.
And I'm like, it was just so hard for me to, what do I say?
Right.
I'm a Christian. I believe in God. And no, Dr. Woodley, this can't be happening. So is that a myth?
Well, it is definitely a myth. Definitely a myth. And I guess too, we are familiar with a few others, apart from the fact that, I'm a Christian, so I can't get breast cancer. We see a lot of, deodorants cause breast cancer, which is also to a myth. There are so many, to be quite honest, that, if I have to stop and try and think of them all.
Let me get slide 10, please, David. Okay, so we have some there.
Oh, okay.
Like number 2 is interesting.
Right.
No one in my family has cancer, so shouldn't have to worry about it.
So that is definitely a myth, because in actuality, only 20% of the cases of cancer of the breast are actually as a result of what would be hereditary or genetic line. In other words, family related. But in fact, 80% of the cases are actually sporadic. So 80% of us as women who would be diagnosed with breast cancer would ultimately be the first of our families to be diagnosed. And so then we need to be rid ourselves of the concept that, not me, simply because of the fact that there's no history of it in our families.
And we have to remember that we can start that history.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that was your case, Ms. Percival, because you told us you don't know of anyone in your family who has it. So we can actually begin that chain, in our family. And the fourth one says, finding a lump in your breast means you have breast cancer.
Which is totally false.
It is totally false.
So this is where the ultrasound comes
Very
in.
good.
Because a lump on a mammogram, whether it is a cyst, cancer, except for the borders, will look the same. It will look the same. So in order to differentiate what it is, we will have to do an ultrasound to see the contents of what is inside that lump. So definitely number 4 is a myth, and number 5 as well.
Oh, okay, Dr. Clark, you're on a roll here. Let's see what number 5 say. A mammogram, can cause breast cancer to spread.
Of course,
that's a myth.
Definitely,
that is a myth. And this one about breast cancer is contagious. And I am telling you, I have persons who come to me and say, Doc, I don't want to, touch the person's clothing.
Right.
I don't want to, drink from, because they think that breast cancer is contagious. So what do you say about that, Dr. Grants?
Well, I think that is the reason why we have programs such as these, hopefully to be able to spread what is the necessary information. And if we can build, what is a certain rapport, amongst ourselves, not only as colleagues, but, family members and so forth, so that the education doesn't remain simply between what would be doctor and patient, but, between what would be family member to family member, friend to friend, and so forth. And so that is really what we need to try and achieve, simply so that we can debunk some of what would be these myths.
Okay, so Ms. Percival, do you have any anything that you thought about breast cancer before you were diagnosed, and also you didn't think about it?
Wow, it gets me off guard.
It caught you off.
Yeah, I was like, why me?
Yeah.
Wait, and then after going through the process, I was like, why not me?
Okay.
Because then I found strength, I found faith, because I didn't have any.
Oh, great. That's awesome.
Yeah.
A stronger person.
So you see, we hear the old cliche, when life gives limes, you make lemonade. And this is just a perfect example. It is so touching, as there's a saying to that. You don't know that you have to be strong when strong is the only option that you have. And girl, you are a real thriver, and I'm so proud of you because I met you in the initial stages, and you were not where you are now. Mentally, you were not there at all.
Nope.
And I'm telling you, your story would be giving hope to so many others out there, because breast cancer is real.
Very.
And you said something so important, that before your diagnosis, you never even thought about it. You understand? And sometimes in order to think about it, or in order to find it, you have to think about it sometimes. So now, I guess from these type of programs, we're going to get ladies and men going home and checking themselves. So
awareness is power.
Awareness is power.
Correct.
Awesome sauce. That's great. That's great. So what about these wires in the push-up ball? I like my push-up boy.
I like mine too.
So, I hear something about wires in push-up ball can cause cancer.
No such thing.
Thank you.
The truth of the matter is that mastologists around the world often prefer that the bras, that they are simply made of cloth and nothing else. But you can imagine.
So what is that word again? Mastologists.
Mastologists.
So
correct. These are individuals, or I should say rather doctors, who are specialized specifically with what would be the care of breasts. Right. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And so their preference is generally that the bras would simply be made of cloth, and usually too, in many instances, this is the only thing that they insist upon. But in actuality, there is no evidence to be able to suggest that the push-up bra or otherwise. Basically, can you imagine a sports bra all year round?
No, I can't. No, I cannot.
So luckily, that is not one of the factors. One of the other things too that I get asked pretty often or pretty frequently would relate to what would be the birth control pill. If taking the birth control pill would increase the risk of breast cancer. So by itself, the birth control pill, if it is a combination, as it should be. In other words, then you have what would be the estrogen component along with the progestin component. Then that does not increase the risk of breast cancer. What we highlight is what it may do is delay the first pregnancy, first full-term pregnancy, which, as Dr. Woodley knows, is a significant point for an oncologist in terms of being an important factor as it would relate to what is the incidence of breast cancer. We point out and we say that, the age at which a woman has her first full-term pregnancy, it is pretty significant in terms of what is the altered risk of breast cancer. So generally, what would be a woman in her 20s or before the age of 20, if she has that first full-term pregnancy, then it decreases the risk of the breast cancer by 50% compared to the general population. And in terms of the general population, we already know that it's 1 in 8 of us as women. If it is that this woman has her first child or first full-term pregnancy after the age of 35, then the risk is increased by 50%, again compared to what is the general population. And so then it's one of the things that we pay attention to. As I tell people, it's not, to say, well, you have to go and hurry up and get a baby simply to not get, or to reduce the risk of breast cancer. But you have to be aware of your risks so that you can be as attentive as is necessary.
Okay. And this, I have patients now asking me to take off both breasts.
Yeah.
Angelina Jolie style.
The Angelina Jolie, what they call it, the syndrome now,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's actually in the literature now, the Angelina Jolie syndrome.
Makes sense.
What do I say to these patients? Because I have actively 2 persons that are saying to me, I found breast cancer in one of the breasts, and they're telling me, doctor, will you take both?
Right. And I'm to be quite honest, I'm so relieved, Dr. Woodley, that you as a surgeon, when you come into contact with patients of such, that you are able to offer what is the necessary counsel, and advise against this. Because the truth of the matter is that by removing both of the breasts, this does not remove what is the risk for breast cancer. One of the things that many women who would have had the double mastectomy prophylactically, as is being purported, one of the things that they generally tend to do would be the reconstructive surgery. And in doing so, then you have to be able to leave a certain amount of what is, flap skin, whatever you may call it. And so then there is always going to be what is that residual microscopic amount of breast tissue that is going to be, that is going to remain there. Apart from that too, as well that in many instances, even after a woman may have had what is a complete mastectomy, then you still see them return with what is, be it a recurrence, of the breast cancer. And there is no breast there, but there is a breast cancer. And so then it's important to highlight that this doesn't offer what is, the necessary protection as is usually, or rather, it's more sensationalized than anything else. I would
because
say.
That's what I told the patient, that it doesn't take away your risk.
Correct.
Of having a recurrence.
Correct.
Although, and even though you don't use implants, as you said, skin is left back, all it takes is just one cell.
One cell. Now you can't even see it.
And you can't even see it. And then that one cell would just, go and proliferate, divide, and then back at square one again.
Correct.
So, my patient, she was disappointed. I told her, it's not good, because her idea was doing both of them means nothing.
Yeah.
I would never get breast cancer in the future. She even spoke about the same Angelina Jolie. That person did it, but I told her she's not free.
Correct.
Of
the
getting
risk, absolutely.
Getting breast cancer again.
And in actuality too, in terms of reducing the risk, the factor that actually greatest reduces the risk of breast cancer would actually be what would be the bilateral oophorectomy, and it would have to be practiced before the age of 35. So in a young woman who,
and the oophorectomy is, for our viewers,
having both of the ovaries removed. And so if that is done before the age of 35, then it reduces the risk of breast cancer by 70%.
This is not encouraged.
But it is not
compared to the general population. And again, this isn't something that you have to do. But if it is that, as a woman who may have what is a significant risk in terms of breast cancer, and you are looking for what may be a prophylactic measure, although it means putting yourself into an early menopause, right? Because that is ultimately what so as Dr. Clark says, it is not encouraged. Nonetheless, though, this is the this is the information.
Okay. So let me again bring up slide 3 for our viewers who may have missed it. The list of activities by Essence of Hope for the month of October. And we are at day number, October the 13th, which is the third activity, which is tonight, currently at the doctor. And then on the 16th, we're going to have Pink Sunday, which is at the Antioch Baptist Church at 9:50 a.m. And just underneath, we have Dr. Clark, so you know where her office is to go and get your mammogram done. Then we have Dance Exercise on the 26th of October, and that's at St. Kitts Marriott Resort at 5 p.m. On the 28th of October, we have Pink Friday. Wear pink all day, everywhere. We're going to pink up the place. And then on the 29th, we have the Pink Walk, and you are encouraged to wear tutus, that's that fluffy thing ballerinas wear, and tall socks. And it's going to start at Limekeel at 5:30 a.m. We want to invite persons to call in. The numbers will come back up on the screen shortly. Okay, as there we have the numbers: 466-2666, 662-8674, 767-4765, and the overseas line is 1-239-645-4500. I know some persons say, Dr. Woodley, breast cancer again. Every year is the same thing. But guess what? We speak about it every year, and we get people coming into us at stage 4.
Correct.
So that tells us breast cancer awareness is never over.
Correct.
And we're going to do it every year. And in fact, we're going to do it every month.
We need to.
We need to. Until we get people coming in at stage 1. Probably zero.
Stage 0.
Yeah,
Correct. My happiest moment.
You understand. So, I mean, I know some persons probably getting tired of it, and, we're doing it year in, year out. But we have to do it. We have to educate. We have to educate, because if not, we're going to be in problems. So in terms of, so do you know how to examine your breasts, Alicia?
Honestly, no.
You don't?
No.
Dr. Clark, you?
Of course.
Okay.
We have Dr. Grant who will...
We have our little model here. We have to walk with our little model. But breast examination is important, very much so important. And we have to remember that we have to do it. And Dr. Clark actually pointed that out, like about a few days after your period, when your breast will not be under the influence of so much hormones. It is not lumpy, and you don't mix up, a normal lump for something that is bad. So it has to be done basically 3 to 5 days after your period. And Dr. Grant just, highlight to us how we would, examine that breast. So she has support.
my darling friend from since high school. So we would divide the breast into what we would consider as being 4 quadrants. I don't know, I might be a bit more comfortable using my own, but nonetheless, we divide the breast into what would be 4 quadrants. And by simply making what is going to be a circular motion, then you make your way throughout the entirety of the breast. You can do this laying down, you can do this while sitting, you can do this while standing. The larger the size of the breast, then I would suggest that you do it laying down, so that way then you don't actually miss any particular area. And you simply come all the way around.
I would recommend that the hand is
extended, right? Well, in terms of the extension of the hand, and I really don't emphasize on that too much. Why? Because then patients insist and they tell me, well, I'm not sure if I'm doing it right. Because in actuality, when we extend the arm, it is so that what would be the external quadrants, the area or the breast tissue of the external quadrants, that it would be much more relaxed. In other words, it's not as, contracted, and so then it's easier for you to be able to feel. But then by the time you come into what is going to be the internal quadrants, then for you to be able to get that same sense, then you actually then have to relax it. So for that reason, that is actually why I don't insist of patients to say keep the arm up, or rather have it up for this part and that part. If it is that you are able to, then you can simply lift it and you do it right around, or you simply leave it down and you do it right around, or you can do both. What is important is to make sure that you do that semicircular motion throughout all or the entirety of the breast, and then at the end, then you give what is going to be a very gentle squeeze of the nipple, so that you can see if for whatever reason there is a discharge or not.
Okay, so that is important. And what we also have to highlight, that some persons after having a mastectomy, they forget about the other breast. Miss Percival, have you? So you have to continue testing the other breast. Correct. And I think probably that is why persons would say, take off the other one, because they don't want to go through
the process.
Yeah, that process, and the re-trauma of testing that breast. So I always would say to my patient, yes, we have dealt with one, but the other one is there still.
Absolutely.
And if you do not look after the other one and something develops and you don't detect it, then you can actually die from that one that has remained. So the illustration there of the breast self-examination, that's what we call it, it's very important. And as Dr. Grant was showing you, you try not to lift your hand or your fingers when you're doing the palpation or feeling of the breast. As I normally tell patients, if you're in the bath, you can put some soap on your breast, and that helps to glide your hand right around. And you start from the areola, which is the black part of the breast, and you go right around. And we also try not to forget the armpits either. We try not to forget the armpits, because sometimes just alone you may have lumps in the armpits but nothing in the breast, and that's a telltale sign that something is happening inside of the breast.
That's where mine was.
And you hear? That's what Miss Percival said, that's where hers, hers was. Okay, and we should not forget the squeezing. I mean, do not squeeze off the nipple. As Dr. Grant said, you slightly squeeze to see if anything is coming out. And nothing should really, sometimes that ovulation, you may get a little thin whitish fluid, but that's normal. But if you're seeing things that are yellow, green, red, bloody, those are signs that, you should check your doctor. Something is going on. Okay, so awareness, we can never,
do it too many times. There's a question here as well, Dr. Woodley. We have people sending in questions on the live stream by Facebook. I see here that Kadian Banton, she asked, what do you say to persons who want to go with the alternative medicine? Is that an option? So you as the surgeon, I would ask you to.
So she need to tell me what type of alternative medicine, because when you think about it for breast lump, I want to know what type of alternative medicine would get rid of a lump.
So that's that I can't think of any either.
I can't think of
any. Right.
So the alternative medicine to getting rid of a lump.
Correct.
And the thing about it, I don't like to tell people no. I don't like to say what you're saying to me. So bring the information to me, we can sit down and talk. But from a surgical point of view, once a lump is found, we need to know what that lump is. Right. How are we going to know what that lump is? We have to do first our imaging, which is our ultrasound or mammogram, or both. And then from there we move to a biopsy. So if the alternative medicine is going to tell me the nature, the characteristics of that lump,
or treat it,
then I am all for it. If I cannot get that, then I would say surgery is the management of choice?
So I'm actually the opposite of Dr. Woodley in this regard, because I have no problem telling people no. And you know, it is a hard truth that is necessary, simply because of the fact that cancer is not an illness that allows you the privilege of being able to wait. It doesn't allow you the benefit of seeing how it goes. Yeah, and so then when it comes to what is a confirmed or even a suspected diagnosis of cancer, it is very important to move very quickly on it so that you would be able to get the necessary treatment in the time that is adequate. And so, as I often emphasize to people, there is no treatment, or rather there is no curing of breast cancer, you know, without what would be some form of surgical management. Whether it is that, you know, this occurs before the person may require, say for example, chemotherapy, or whether it is that the sequence may vary, but for us to be able to get to say what is the curing of breast cancer, then some form of surgery must occur. And another thing too, in respect to what is the chemotherapy, I try to emphasize on the fact that when it comes to chemotherapy, chemotherapy isn't just, you know, a bunch of synthetic drugs as, you know, people think about. So, you know, we actually have what is a group of drugs within the cytostatics, or chemotherapy drugs as people would commonly refer to them as, that are actually plant derived, you know, specifically what would be the taxanes. And
That's
so
the alternative.
no, it's not alternative. It's not alternative. It's not alternative. It is just, you know, derived from plants, but it is actually used. Actually, it's used very frequently. Most patients who have breast cancer at some point would receive what would be that form of treatment along with it. So it's not a situation of where we're battling, you know, synthetic versus natural. Yeah. What happens is that it's a very comprehensive area in terms of, you know, study, and so then what is best, it is put to use. That is basically what I want to say.
Okay, so we are basically at the top of the hour. I mean, we were wondering how we were going to get to an hour and a half. And trust me, once you're having fun, and it was really interesting, the topic tonight. And of course, I want to thank Essence of Hope for actually organizing this panel discussion. It's always a pleasure on my behalf to come out and speak to, you know, the public, educate them. I do believe education is, you know, the tool that helps you to take control of your life. Education helps you to save your life, and not only your life sometimes, but the life of others around you. And as long as I live, I will be educating people as it relates to medicine, as it relates to what goes on in the body. Okay, I want to let my panelists, we're just gonna, you know, wrap up now. It's 9:56. Persons, I know we have some questions on the live feed. If we would not be able to answer them now because we're actually wrapping up the show, but you can get in touch with us. We have Dr. Grant, who is at Wellpoint, that's up at Taylor's, right? Taylor's. We have Dr. Clark, who's down by the Antioch Baptist Church. You can always go there, ask questions as well. You have myself, I'm down at Oasis Medical Consultant by South Independence Square. And you have Miss Percival. No, we have Miss Percival.
Absolutely.
And I think Miss Percival is so much more equipped than even us, you know, because she's a thriver.
Correct.
So she understands, you know, I had a friend of mine who is, you know, Dr. Gilbert. He used to say, you know, it's always good to sometimes go to the experiences of patients because you then really understand what it is and what they're going through.
Experience is the best teacher.
Experience is the best teacher. Okay, so that is so true. So I'm going to ask my panelists to, you know, give their closing remarks. And although it's October, Breast Cancer Month, every month is breast cancer, every day, every minute. So we just don't want to limit it to the month of October.
Correct.
So, Ms. Percival, we're going to start with you. You are the lady of the hour. And we're going to ask you to give some closing remarks as we are heading out to the persons who are viewing about breast cancer.
Thanks for having me. I was scared. But I just want to say thanks to Essence of Hope. The name speaks for itself. It gives you hope. because I didn't have any. Honestly, I didn't have any. And after reaching out, they made it possible. They donated, they supported. I could have called Pam anytime. She basically adopted me now.
Oh, wow. Kudos to Pam.
Yes. So, thank you, Essence of Hope. And when a loved one or a friend come to you and tell you they have cancer, don't run away, don't shy them off. Listen, be there, and be supportive. It's difficult on the person and also on the family. Mentally first, physically and emotionally. You're gonna be there to listen and be a shoulder. And then everything will be okay, because then they figure, well, you're there. And then they're gonna push them to go further, because then they ain't doing it for themselves. They're also doing it for their loved ones. So be supportive, get y'all checks. Early detection save life. I'm a testimony.
Oh,
thanks.
Congrats. Kudos to you. I'm so happy that you joined us tonight. Dr. Clark, your closing remarks.
Okay. And first of all, I will say thanks for this lovely panelist that I have here with me. You all made me feel very comfortable, I must admit. Okay, and for the women over 40 and over, I suggest that you get a mammogram done at least once. At least start getting your mammogram done annually. And for those below 40, please do the physical examination. If there's a lump felt, at least an ultrasound. All women are encouraged to do the self-breast examination, and men too. Men as well, to at least check their chest to make sure that there are no lumps felt. All right, I just want to say thanks for having me, and good night.
You're most welcome. And Dr. Grant Tates.
I just want to highlight again the importance of what would be the monthly breast examination. We simply cannot go wrong with as repeating what is the necessary cycle of examining your breast at the be it a week after you would have had your period. And I honestly would like to see this become such of a practice where, we are now teaching our daughters the same way we teach them, for example, to make use of, sanitary napkins, for example, when they first start having menstruation and that sort of thing, how we teach them in terms of brasiers and just about everything else. Breast cancer is of such where it is not going anywhere, unfortunately. The statistics will continue to rise, and so then we have to become so very active and constantly so. And ultimately, for as long as we live, we should be checking our breasts as women. So again, if it is that you're a woman who menstruates, then you should do this about a week after the period. If you're a woman who no longer menstruates, then you do it. You pick a day of the month and you just simply try and make sure that you do it every month. So emphasis on breast examination, self-breast examination, and of course, it's something that you can do in the privacy of your own home. So save lives by doing so.
Okay, so I want to thank all the ladies for coming here tonight. And as I say, it's an effort that we make to come out. We are busy, and we are here because we see the importance of being here, and we want to educate. The show was Ask the Doctor, and we did have a great show tonight. And we want to let the public know that the activities by Essence of Hope continues. You can go on their website page, you can see their Facebook page, and you can see all the activities that are going to be happening during the month of October. We want to say thank you to the founders of Essence of Hope Breast Cancer Foundation for being there for our sisters, for our mothers, for our aunts, for our ladies. We want to thank them so much. And breast cancer, yes, it is in October, but as I said earlier, we want to always be thinking about it, because after October, the persons who suffer from breast cancer, they still continue to suffer. So as we go through the month of October, let us please be supportive. Let's go out to the walk on the 29th of October. We reach a peak of 1,700 in 2019, and we want to go further and beyond. So have a great night, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. And please, early detection save lives. Good night.